Welcome to another week of This Week in Royal History, where we explore the personal stories, triumphs, and tragedies of the royal figures who have shaped the course of history, delving into their fascinating lives and the legacies they left behind.
The Tudors Dynasty Podcast.
Hold on to your French hoods, because we're diving into the life of a French princess turned Spanish queen. Elizabeth of Valois was born into royalty on the 2nd of April in 1545 as the eldest daughter of King Henry II of France and Catherine de' Medici. She was close to Mary, Queen of Scots, so close that they even shared a bedroom growing up. Talk about a royal sleepover. But things got even more interesting when Elizabeth married Philip II of Spain at the age of 14. Let's just say there was a big age gap, with Philip being 32 at the time of their marriage. This was Philip's third time at the altar, having lost his previous wife, Mary I of England, to illness. Elizabeth went on to give birth to 5 daughters, but sadly, only 2 survived infancy. Tragically, Elizabeth died at the age of 23 due to complications from childbirth. Her infant daughter also passed away. Despite her short time on Earth, Elizabeth left quite the legacy as a French princess turned Spanish queen. Get ready to dive into some juicy Tudor history, friends. Arthur Tudor, born on the night of September 19th, or 20th, in 1486, was the first child of King Henry VII of England and Elizabeth of York. And let's just say he was a pretty big deal. His birth solidified the union of the House of York and Lancaster, 2 royal families who had been at odds for ages. From the get-go, Arthur held the title of Duke of Cornwall and was also Prince of Wales. He was being groomed for greatness, but things really took a turn when he was betrothed to Catherine of Aragon. Catherine was the daughter of Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella I of Castile, also known as the Catholic monarchs of Spain. Talk about a royal match. Arthur and Catherine settled at Ludlow Castle, but sadly, their happily ever after was cut short when they both came down with an unknown illness. Catherine managed to recover, but tragically, Arthur passed away on the 2nd of April, 1502, at the age of 15. He was laid to rest at Worcester Cathedral, and his young brother Henry became the new heir to the throne of England. But despite his short life, Arthur's legacy lived on. His younger brother Henry went on to become one of the most famous, or infamous, monarchs in English history, King Henry VIII. And if you know anything about Henry VIII, you know he had quite the colorful life. Let me tell you about Lady Ma Duff, the ultimate royal fashionista. She was born on the 3rd of April, 1893, to Alexander Duff, 1st Duke of Fife, and Princess Louise of Wales. With the future Edward VII as her grandfather and Queen Victoria as her great-grandmother. That's some royal lineage. At her birth, she was 6th in line to the throne, and even though she wasn't originally styled a princess, she became one in 1905 after her mother was created Princess Royal by Edward VII. From then on, she was known as Princess Maud and styled Her Highness, making her and her sister Alexandra the only female line descendants to be granted the use of royal titles. In November 1923, Maud tied the knot with Charles, Lord Carnegie, in a stylish ceremony at the Royal Military Chapel in London. Together, they had a son born in 1929. After the wedding, she dropped her royal title and went by Lady Maud Carnegie, but that didn't stop her from being the talk of the town. She was a regular at court with the royal family and attended the coronation of both George V and VI. But Maud's love for fashion was truly what set her apart. She was known for her impeccable style, always wearing the latest trends and setting new ones herself. Her wardrobe was the envy of many, and she wasn't afraid to take risks and wear bold colors and patterns. In fact, she was often featured in fashion magazines of the time, and her looks were the inspiration for many. Sadly, Maud's reign as a fashion icon was cut short when she passed away on the 14th of December, 1945, at the age of 52, after battling acute bronchitis. All right, I hope you're ready for this next one, because this one is going to be a wild ride. Victoria of Hesse and by Rhine was born on the 5th of April, 1863. And she was not your typical princess. For starters, her maternal grandmother was none other than Queen Victoria herself, who was present at her birth in Windsor Castle. Talk about a royal entrance. Victoria grew up in Darmstadt with her sister Elizabeth until the age of 18, when she was sent to Britain during the Prussian invasion of Hesse. But that's just the beginning of the drama. In 1878, when Victoria was just 15 years old, tragedy struck her family when they all came down with diphtheria. Her mother and youngest sister Marie tragically died from the illness. Victoria, being the eldest daughter, was suddenly thrust into the role of caregiver for her younger siblings. She became a mother to them before she even became a wife and mother herself. Fast forward to April 1884, when Victoria married her cousin, Prince Louis of Battenberg. They had a love-filled marriage and 4 beautiful children together. But things took a turn when World War I began, and Louis lost his Navy position due to his German background. To avoid discrimination, the family changed their name from Battenberg to Mountbatten, which we recognize to this day. But the twists and turns didn't end there. In 1917, Victoria's 2 sisters, Elizabeth and Alex, were murdered during the Russian Revolution, and her brother Louis was deposed as Grand Duke of Hesse. Then, in 1937, tragedy struck again, when her granddaughter, nephew, and 2 great-grandchildren were killed in a plane crash on their way to Britain. Can you believe this? It's like a soap opera. Through it all, Victoria remained a strong and resilient woman. She spent her widowhood at Kensington Palace, where she survived a bombing during World War II and had to take refuge at Windsor Castle. She passed away on the 24th of September, 1950, at 87 years old, leaving behind a rich legacy. And here's an interesting tidbit. Victoria was the maternal grandmother of Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, husband to Queen Elizabeth II. Let me tell you the story of Charles VIII of France, a king who had big ambitions, but not so much luck. Charles was born as the only surviving son of Louis XI of France and Charlotte of Savoy. He became king at the age of 13 in 1483. But wait, there's more. His elder sister Anne ruled as regent until he turned 21 years old. Now let's talk about Charles's love life. At the age of 3, he was betrothed to Margaret of Austria, daughter of the future Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian I. But the engagement was called off in 1491 when Charles decided to marry Anne, Duchess of Brittany, instead. Anne had been set to marry Margaret's father, Maximilian, but Charles's sister couldn't let that happen, as it would mean that the Habsburgs would surround France. To ensure that it didn't happen, Anne, who was regent of France, invaded and forced Anne of Brittany to renounce her marriage by proxy to Maximilian. Talk about a dramatic love triangle, huh? But Charles didn't just have his eyes on marriage, he also had his sights set on the Kingdom of Naples, which he believed he had a claim to through his paternal grandmother. In 1494, he invaded Italy to press his claim, and at first, his campaigns into the peninsula were successful. But his army was eventually driven out by mid-July 1495, and he lost everything he had gained previously. And just like that, the Great Wars of Italy, or the Habsburg-Valois Wars, began, lasting for another 50 years. Sadly, Charles's life came to an end in a rather unusual way. On the 7th of April, 1498, he died after hitting his head on a door lintel at the chateau where he was born. Despite his short reign, Charles had 7 children with Anne, but they all died young. He was succeeded by his cousin and brother-in-law, Louis XII of France, who later went on to marry Charles's widow, Anne, in 1499. Talk about keeping it in the family. And that concludes this episode. Thank you so much for going on this journey with me throughout royal history. With these episodes, I always hope that it leads you in the direction of researching one of these historical figures, because honestly, I only just scratched the surface on them. Coming up Tuesday on the show, I'm once again joined by Dr. Emma Cahill-Marone, and this time we talk about Catherine of Aragon and women at Tudor court. You're not going to want to miss this one. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.
The Tudors Dynasty Podcast.